Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the fourth session of our CAL's Board of Governors preparation series. We want to invite all of you, and we want to thank the San Diego Organization of Healthcare Leaders, our co-partners in producing this series. This is the fourth session focusing on finance and human resources. And I believe this year, the percentage changed a teeny bit. I'm not sure which one, but it was 11% before. I think it's finance now is, human resources is now 12% of the weightage, 24 questions each. All right, moving on. We're pleased to present this session. This is the board from California Association of Healthcare Leaders. All of the volunteer force that's behind this session, we want to thank all of them for being here and supporting us and you. Michael, unfortunately, is not able to join today, but the rest of the team is here. And moving on, this is the San Diego Organization of Healthcare Leaders team. Thank you, Mary and Florencia, for your support. All right. All right, this is I'm sorry, was it Nora who's going to take this on?
Sherry gets to be the one to talk to us about our heart-focused breathing
technique. All right, let's invite Sherry.
Apologize for the noise in the background. Nora, do you mind taking it? I can't do the with the noise just at this moment, but thank you.
Sure. I won't pretend to be as good as Sherry, but so again, with the test taking tips, just relax, breathe, think clearly. Remember, you get time to go back to questions. You can mark them and go back. This is Rick's most famous recommendation is to read the options as true, false. Read and reread the questions. And remember what I say, read them backwards too. Just saying. Beware of absolutes, beware of all of the above, all except, the double negatives, all that good stuff. Again, you have plenty of time. And again, what people have found very, very useful is you get to mark them and go back to review later. So for this breathing technique that Sherry had taught us is to focus your attention on the area of the heart, breath flowing in and out. Breathing gets a little slower and deeper than normal. Inhale 5 seconds, exhale 5 seconds, or whatever rhythm is comfortable. And that will help. We do that before we start this session, so you find yourself very, very calm. Next. Okay, so we have a parking lot question. And so the question originally had been, is the 7th edition of the Well-Managed Healthcare Organization sufficient to study? And from our position is the 9th edition, which is the most current, is, for some people that's really all they need. But when you do the competency assessment, you may find that you need help in other areas as well. And the 8th edition is probably still recent enough to be able to be useful, but anything older than the 8th is probably not going to be as helpful. And for the credits, you record those yourself in the My ACHE section of the ACHE website. Any further questions?
8 credits, just a reminder, it's 8 credits.
8 credits, yes. So thank you. Next slide. Okay, and we're going to be sending a SurveyMonkey out at the end. And again, we need absolute constructive criticism on how to improve the program. Again, we didn't just come with this most glorious program. It's been a long process, and we really, really do take seriously everybody's recommendations.
All right, so we do have an upcoming event from Cal. It's for November 1st. It does come with, I think, 1.5 credits, qualified education. I think we talked about this in the first session, where starting 2024, ACHE is going to change how you get the credits for qualification for the board. And this is an opportunity for you if you're going to apply or sit for the exam this year. This is great, 1.5 credits that you can get for attending the event. So check it out on our website. Great. So I am pleased to introduce James Revels to our session today. James has been part of our committee presenting the finance topic at least for 2 years, if not longer. Right, James?
I think it's been 3 or 4 years.
Oh, so I'm sorry. He has been an integral part of this committee in terms of this very complicated topic. I think a lot of us, including myself, who are not active in finance matters, it's a tough domain. But the good news is that you don't need to know everything about it. There are some key concepts. At the same time, I think James has been excellent in helping all of our members in the past, at least addressing some of the key concepts through these sample questions. He has gotten master's in advanced studies in leadership of healthcare organizations, has been with University of California, San Diego for at least 2 years, teaching accounting and finance, and has been a co-chair, I think, of both the committee. Were you in the San Diego chapter as well on the advancement committee? Yeah. So he's moved to Washington, but he's continuing to do the good work, helping all of us. Thank you so much, James. And it's your turn. Take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining, and just wanted to let you all know we're happy to be here and support you on your journey as you prepare for this exam. And as we go through the questions and everything, feel free to stop if you have questions, things, concepts you still don't understand. We're happy to help you do that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are some of the concepts that we'll be touching on today, and things like financial accounting principles, which are basically accounting principles and rules that guide companies when reporting their financial data. We'll talk about operating budget principles, these are revenue and expenses that a healthcare company expects to use for its operations. We'll touch on capital budgeting principles, which adopts other principles as well, as such as decision-making and cash flows, and really opportunity costs when determining what type of capital investments to make in the organization. We'll touch on the different types of reimbursement methodology, capitation versus fee-for-service versus value-based. We'll productivity measures, which are so important in healthcare to measure the performance of the providers and the clinical support staff. We'll talk about the various financial controls and how that relates into what we do in terms of monitoring and controlling and providing direction for the organization. Okay, next slide. Okay, we'll also get into revenue generation, and these are provide the different various type of revenue streams we see when based on the services provided, and then the sources of the revenues. Business models, which is so important when we introduce new products and services to the organization, and how profitable they are, and the assessment that goes on as part of that process. All the financial decision making, when things are really tight with as they are today, how healthcare companies cut costs to preserve their profit margins. And then asset management, such as things are such as MRI machines and ventilators and other supplies, and how we manage those assets for the organization. Okay, so let's actually go on to our first question. Okay, so this question asks, during the investigation of a merger or acquisition, why would it be prudent for healthcare executive to obtain advice from someone other than internal legal counsel? Is this A, regular legal counsel may not be objective? B, external legal counsel may have experience in joint venture? C, external legal counsel has the ability to provide services in a more economic and timely manner? Or D, specialized expertise is needed in this area? Let's go ahead and I'll give you an opportunity to put your best answer in the chat, and then we'll review the question.
Looks like we've got some Ds.
Yeah, a little combination of different answers. Let's take a look at this one. Looks like a good combination of A's and D's. So A, regular legal counsel may not be objective. Well, this may be true, but I'm not sure it's a primary reason why we would want to have it by someone other than internal legal counsel. B, external legal counsel may have experience in joint ventures. Well, let's look at the stem of the question. It's asking about merger or acquisition, which is different from a joint venture. So that's a distractor. And so it really doesn't answer the questions that are being asked. So we could probably eliminate B as a choice. C, external legal counsel has the ability to provide the services in a more economic and timely manner. Certainly not more economic, and if anything, it's be more expensive to obtain external legal counsel. Probably more timely. So I think in this response, we could probably eliminate C as a choice as well. And then finally, D, specialized expertise is needed in this area. This really response is about making the decision to hire outside business counsel that allows business to receive exactly the advice they need and exactly when they need it. So I think, out of the choices, probably D is I would say is our best answer. And let's see what the answer. It is D. Yeah. So this one's again, you're looking for the best and broadest answer here. And although A may be true, I don't think it's broad enough in terms of answering the question that's being asked here. And so D is probably the better answer. Okay, let's go to the next one. This one asks, the ratio of output to input is a measure of A, liquidity, B, process, C, productivity, or D, the work of environment. Let's see what you all think. Go ahead and put your answers in the chat. A lot of C's. Okay. Yeah, so A, liquidity is just about meeting your short-term obligations. So that's not really having to do with what is being asked in terms of output to input. Process is, these are about looking at specific steps in a process that lead to a particular outcome. So obviously that doesn't really answer the questions being asked. C, productivity. Yeah, this is a measure of a ratio between output and input. It's measuring the aggregate output within a single input or comparing the aggregate input to an aggregate output over time. So C sounds like that would probably be the best answer. And then finally, D, this is more the work of the environment is about the setting, social aspects, and the physical conditions that an individual performs their job. So not sure D would represent our best answer either. So I would say it would be C, which seems like a lot of people have agreed with that. So, and it is C. Great job on this one. Okay. A hospital that continuously assesses the interests of the community and searches for ways to meet these interests can be described as A, predatory, B, market-oriented, C, market optimized, or D, differentiated. Use a little bit of mixture between B and C. Interesting. Okay, let's review this one. So the first answer, predatory. Wow, that sounds kind of bad to me, but it actually refers to a pricing strategy where we offer a low price point with the idea of driving out competition. So probably doesn't answer the question. Market oriented. This is an approach that business take to prioritize identify the needs and desires of the consumers and create products and services that satisfy them. Well, that sounds like that aligns with what's being asked here. But let's look at the remaining choices. Market optimize. This is really about improving your marketing efforts in order for an organization to maximize their desired business outcomes or goals. So this would not necessarily consider the interests of the community. And then finally, D, differentiated. This is really about either looking at elements such as distribution network or price point to distinguish itself from this competition. So I think here, market-oriented probably more specifically addresses what's being asked here. It's probably our best choice. Let's see what the answer is. It is B. But yeah, that's really the difference between the market optimized is more about reaching your business goals and marketing in that way. So market-oriented is one's really considers the needs of the interest of the community. So that was really the difference between those two. Okay, let's go on the next one. Net income as a percent of gross revenues and return on equity are two most important indicators of A, profitability, B, creditworthiness, C, market strength, or D, cash position. Let's see what everybody thinks. Let's put your answers in the chat. Yeah, this is one. This one's a little bit more obvious, I think. It's like we have a lot of A's in the answer in the chat. Okay, so let's review this one. So it's talking about net income as percent gross revenues and then return on equity, which is just net income divided by your net assets or shareholders' equity. So it's giving you a big clue what it relates to a profitability. It sounds like a lot of people got credit. One of this doesn't really have anything to do with net income. It's just your ability to meet your upcoming obligations. Market strength is just doesn't really again relate to net income or profitability. And then C, cash positions. It's about your ability to of how much cash you have in the bank to meet your upcoming obligations. So I think I would agree with pretty much what everybody indicated in the chat is A is probably going to be our best answer. Yep, that's A. So great job there. The response. Everybody looks like everybody got this one. Okay, let's go to the next one. When reviewing assets, which element is the most important indication of organization's liquidity? Is it A, buildings and equipment, B, long-term investments, C, cash and short-term investments, or D, land and other assets? See what everybody thinks. Yeah, seeing a lot of Cs, or pretty much all Cs at this point. Yeah, so this question, really, if you look at the different choices, when it talks about liquidity, it's your ability to have the most liquid assets. And buildings and equipment, long-term investments, and land are not easily converted to cash, which is your definition of liquidity. So this one's pretty obvious. Cash and short-term investments, these are things short-term investments specifically can be easily converted to cash, as opposed to these other longer-term assets, which are not easily converted to cash or are known as non-liquid assets. So I think C is probably our best answer here, which seems to be the consensus. Yep. So it is C, and it looks like everybody got that one right off the bat. So that's great. Doing a great job. Okay, financial statements are important in order to identify, measure, record, and communicate in dollar terms the economic events and status of the organization. B, serve as a control mechanism for budgeting. C, provide detailed financial information for control at the department level. Or D, provide staffing guidelines to human resources managers. Let's see what everybody thinks on this one. Okay, let's review this one. So yeah, in the choices, A really is referring to the and a general purpose of financial statement is to provide information about the results of operation, your financial position, and your cash flow of the organization. So I think A does a pretty good job in describing that. B, although it is a use of the financial statements, it's not a primary one. It's more of a secondary use of it. So probably that wouldn't represent our best choice. C, providing detailed information for control at the department level. That exists in your subsidiary ledger and not in your financial statements. And then D, provide staffing guidelines to human resource managers. That's independent of your financial statements. So I think, as every pretty much guessed, A is probably our best answer. And it is A. Looks like everybody pretty much got that right. So again, great job on that one. Okay, so this one, in most cases, the most favorable financial audit opinion that an organization can receive is A, qualified opinion, B, adverse opinion, C, disclaimer of opinion, or D, unqualified opinion. Let's see what y'all think. Looks like we had a little bit of mixture here between A and D. Okay, let's go through this one. So let's talk about these different terms. So a qualified opinion that's when an auditor isn't confident about any specific process or transaction that prevents them from issuing a clean report. So in that way, they qualify their opinion because they found something, and most investors don't find this type of an opinion acceptable. Means they found an issue in the financial statements. B, adverse opinion. Well, that sounds pretty bad, but basically what's happening is they're not satisfied at all with the financial statements, or they discover a high level of material in the statement, which creates that situation where they have to give an adverse opinion. So there will be a general, investors and governments will have a general mistrust of those financial statements based on this opinion. So B, obviously, and it's pretty obvious on that one, wouldn't be a good choice. C, disclaimer of opinion. This is when the auditors distance themselves from the financial statement, and they're disclaiming their opinion because there were some limitations as we went through the audit from completing the audit process. So they're not offering an opinion at all. And then finally, an unqualified opinion. This type of opinion doesn't have any kind of adverse comments, or doesn't include any disclaimers about causes or about the audit process. So this is the type of opinion investors expect to see, and what company expect to receive on their financial statements. So I think D is probably our best choice here. And it is D. So that's the difference between A and D. A is they found an issue in your financial statement, so they're qualifying their opinion. And D, there's no qualification in their opinion. It's known as a clean report. So again, that's the difference between the two, because it seems like there was a combination of choices in the chat. So, but in most questions, as you can see here, between B and C, you can eliminate those right away, and oftentimes it's really between two answers. So, in any event, just it's helpful to understand the terms and definitions when these things come up, and utilizing flashcards to help prepare yourself for the exam. Okay, let's go on the next one. The purpose of a statement of operations or income statement is to A, present the financial position of the organization at a specific point in time. B, present the reasons net assets change from one period to another. C, present cash receipts, where they came from, and cash disbursements where they went to during an accounting period. Or D, present the operating results of the organization over a period of time. Let's see what everyone thinks. Yep, seen a lot of D's in the answer. Pretty much all D's so far. So let's review this. What the question is testing you on is your knowledge of financial statements and what each type of financial statement represents. But even if you didn't know that, it's giving you a clue. It's talking about the statement of operations in the question. And look at D. It talks about operating results. So that's a pretty big clue of probably what our best answer is. But just to go through these, A, present the financial position at a specific point in time. That describes a balance sheet when they talk about a specific point in time. And when they say period of time, they're describing an income statement or a statement of operations. So there's clues in these to tell you what type of financial statements these answers represent. Net asset change from one period to another, that your statement of changes in stockholders' equity, and your cash receipts and cash disbursements in C, that refers to your cash flow statement. Again, this type of question, again, they those clues in terms of embedded in the answer helps guide you sometimes to understand what the best answer here is. And I think everybody pretty much got that and saw that. So that's great job. Okay, let's go to the next one. Ratios that measure an organization's long-term liquidity are called A, liquidity ratios, B, profitability ratios, C, capital structure ratios, or D, efficiency ratios. See what everybody thinks. See a lot of D's, I think, or X are mixed here. Between D and A.
It amazes me how often I forget the answer to this, and I'm concerned that I just jumped to the wrong answer, and
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this one's kind of tricky, I think. And really just, it's about knowing the definition around the ratios, and then that's where the flashcards come in. But let's review this. So when they talk about liquidity ratio, this is kind of a tricky one. It's really referring to your ability to pay your upcoming or short-term debt obligations. And the question is asking about long-term liquidity. And so A is really addressing short-term liquidity. So A probably would not be our best answer. B, profitability ratios, really that's about, looking at its revenue relative, really looking at a company's earning potential relative to its revenue and operating costs and other assets. It's about how efficiently a company generates profit and value for its shareholders. So it really isn't really addressing liquidity at all. So we can eliminate B as a choice. Now C, capital structure ratio, which is also known as leverage ratios. This is these financial ratios about measuring the firm's long-term stability and structure. And that seems to be what question is asking us. So, the calculations taking our total liabilities and dividing our total equity, but it really is something that is measuring our long-term stability of a company. So C sounds like that would be a pretty good choice. And then finally, D, efficiency ratios. These ratios measure how efficiently a company uses its assets to generate revenues and its ability to manage those assets. So does that address liquidity? No, it doesn't. These are things like inventory turnover ratio, asset turnover ratio, your receivables turnover ratio. So it's not really addressing a liquidity. So I think here C is probably the best, our best answer, and more specifically addresses the long-term portion of the question. So let's see what the answer is. And it is C. So do you see? See the as we analyze the question, you have to always go back to the stem of the question and what is asking you. And I would encourage you to go back once you look at your choice, go back and reread the question at least a couple of times to just make sure you're understanding what they're asking, and that would help eliminate some of the choices here in terms of reasoning these out. And also, as I said, remember it's important to memorize the definitions of the different types of ratios. That will also help as well.
And you mentioned the flashcards, and yes, they have the definitions and the references.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. The purpose of a strategic financial plan is to look 10 years to determine what the business will look like. B, translate the strategic plan into next year's objectives. C, convert the operating plan into monetary terms. Or D, identify resources that will be necessary to accomplish the strategic plan. Let's see what everyone thinks. Seeing some D's so far. Okay, so let's talk about let's start with the definition of strategic financial plan and what this is. It's really a roadmap to understand what direction your business is headed and why. Financial planning strategies for your business can help you determine where to spend your money, time, and other resources. It's really it's setting the overall goals for your business and developing a plan to achieve them. And it involves taking a step back from your day-to-day operation, asking where your business is headed and what the priority should be. So let's look at the choices. A is saying look 10 years to determine what the business will look like. Well, it really is more about ensuring the organization is following a plan to attain their desired short and long-term goals to maximize value for the shareholders. So A is probably not our best choice. B, translate the strategic plan into next year's objectives. Remember, we said we're taking a step back from our day-to-day operations, asking where your business is headed and what the priority should be. So again, B would be a good choice. C is converting your operating plan into monetary terms. It's more about setting your overall goals for your business and developing a plan to achieve them. So C probably wouldn't be a good choice either. And then finally, D, identifying the resources that will be needed to accomplish the strategic plan. Yeah, it's about financial planning strategies for your business and which can help determine where you spend your money, time, and resources. So D, I think, more specifically address the definition that I've laid out, the questions that's being asked. And it sounds like a lot of people have gotten that as well, and based on the responses in the chat. So yeah, D is, and so great response in this one. You guys got it right away. Okay, 11.
Yeah, it's listed in the flashcards. Sorry.
Yep, no worries. No, that's great. Thank you, Nora. Okay, so this one says a zero-based plan or budget can be best described as A, starting each planning or budget cycle with a clean slate. B, adjusting expenses based on realized volumes. C, allowing unencumbered funds to be transferred to the next year. Or D, limiting department managers to only expenses they control. Okay, so let's talk about this. This one was, I think, the question's a little more obvious. So A is mentioned starting each planning budget cycle with clean slate, which I think that a good definition of what zero-based budgeting is. You start with a clean slate every time in order to justify and prioritize, the department expenditures. I think B, C, and D. B is you're already starting with some amount, so you're not starting from scratch. That's known as flex budgeting. You're taking your current year expenses and flexing it based on volume. C, you're just transferring your budget from one year to the next. And D really doesn't really have anything to do with what's being asked here. So I think A, is probably our best result, our best answer here. And it sounds like a lot of people, a lot of us already got that. Yep, it's a great job. Again, you guys knew that right away. Okay, so managed care plans that exert the most control over providers and therefore save the most money in provider payments are A, managed indemnity plans, B, preferred provider organizations, C, closed panel HMOs, or D, point of service HMOs. See what you guys think. Okay, so let's review this one. The indemnity plans, they usually cover 1% of customary and reasonable charges that that's charged by the provider. So that's probably your plan that represents, that has the most freedom and control. Definitely not A is the answer. Provider organizations, you're still going to a network of physicians and hospitals and providers, but you do have flexibility and control to go outside that network, although you'll pay a higher cost for that care. So PPO, I think, again, probably not our best choice. Closed panel HMOs, these are providers that are employed by the health-based HMO organization, and you're restricted by those network of providers and hospitals. So C probably represents the most restrictive in terms of the choices we're given here. Point of service is more of a hybrid between HMO plans and PPO. So you still are within a network of providers, but there is some freedom and flexibility similar to the PPO. But so I think in terms of the questions being asked, your C is probably our best choice, because it asks the most control over providers and saves the most money. So and that's why C represents our best choice. All these plans have a degree of flexibility and control, but I think HMOs obviously are the most restrictive, because you're within a specific panel of providers they're dealing with. Okay, our last question. A productivity measure that takes into account a level of skill that is required to accomplish the task is A, hourly rate, B, paid hours per unit of service, C, scheduled hours per unit of service, or D, labor compensation per unit of service. Let's see what everybody thinks about this one. It's kind of interesting. This one, we're seeing a little bit of variation in the chat in terms of responses. But let's review this one. So let's look at A, hourly rate. Certainly to measure a protein measure that takes into account the level of skill required does need the hourly rate. But that by itself doesn't answer the question, because it's asking level of skill required to accomplish the task. So we have one component of what's needed: paid hours per unit of service. Well, we need to know how many hours it takes them to complete one unit. So certainly that is a component of what's being asked here, but by itself, it doesn't completely answer the question. C, just scheduled hours per unit of service. Well, we're probably going to look at actual paid hours rather than the scheduled. So I think you can eliminate C. D, labor compensation per unit of service. And so it's telling you how much, what the amount, what it's considered the skill mix, or the combination of what's paid to the staff to produce one unit of service. So it's really taking the hourly rate in A plus the paid hours per unit of service in B, and considering both of those things in answering this question. So here D is probably our best choice, because the actual math behind this is a computation per hour, and then the output per hour to determine the labor compensation per unit of service and what is needed to accomplish or produce one unit of service. Okay, well, I think that completes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions what we went through so far? Okay, well, I'll turn it over to Sherry then.
Thank you, James.
Thanks so much, James. Appreciate it. I always learn more and more every time I hear your section on finance, and I'm glad you do it, present it. I'll hand it to Rick.
I'm going to hand it back to Sherry. Just a quick introduction of Sherry, who is the former chair of this committee, and we miss her a lot. She is an RN and has recently done her DNP, Doctor of Nursing Practice. She's director of quality and compliance for By the Bay Health, teaches at University of San Francisco School of Nursing, and has been a longtime volunteer with Cal, winning our service awards in 2022. So I'm going to hand it back to her for human resources.
Thank you so much, Rick. Appreciate it. As we talk about human resources, this is probably one of the sections where you're going to see some of the most interesting questions that you'll think, gosh, that answer seems real obvious. So don't second guess yourself if you see answers that look real obvious. And this particular section has some good distractors in it, meaning those questions that will take you off course a bit, kind of make you think, well, maybe that one's right, maybe it's not. Distractors are part of the test writing questions for these national exams. So we'll talk about that too as we do the brain walk. Important section to write notes to yourself. If some of you have had very strong backgrounds in HR, you've managed folks, others don't feel that you can't do this if you haven't had a job where you've managed others, because what you'll do is write down different topics that you will go back and look at in either the textbook that you purchased or any areas that you're using for study, and just write yourself notes on those topics. So as we talk about human resources, there are a lot of laws, there's a lot of regulations. And at the end of this presentation, in the slide deck, there was a great grid that was put together by Rick and some others that will help you break it down for your study purposes. Staffing methodologies, excuse me, we did talk a lot about that. James gave us some techniques and topics in finance, and we do have that covered a bit in HR as well. As we talk about performance management and at evaluations and going through that process, if you see a question, it might be an ordered question, like you do this first, you do this first, you do that first. So as you're doing your readings in HR, write down some of the things that you might do action-wise in order. For instance, in order to hire a position, you have to have a job analysis, you have to write a job description, and then you go into the hiring process. So think about that in HR. Motivational and developmental principles and techniques, always go back to some of the stellar ones, the basics, Hertzberg's motivational theory and different things, and have a general understanding of those as you put together your study materials. And satisfaction engagement measurements, we have a question that will kind of talk about that. Obviously that's a big area of importance for us at looking at employee satisfaction surveys or employee wellness surveys and different things that are important in HR. So next slide. Different other topics. And again, these are excellent outlines to use as outlines for you to write out some of your questions. OSHA is a big area, and workplace violence that is important for all of those in many industries, but healthcare as well. As we look at how HR decisions interact with the strategic plan, interact with the financial plans, that's important as well because they are a component of it. And labor relations practices and strategies, if you haven't been in a union environment or managed in a union environment, this is an area that there's a lot of good information on: collective bargaining agreements, the CBA, and different rules and regulations around managing in a labor environment are important for you to look at. Job design processes, again, something that gives us some clarity and some definition on essential functions and how we do our work. And then succession planning models. So I do distinctly remember questions on what are the best avenues or what are the best approaches to succession planning, because it's a very important work for us. So as we look at this, we're going to talk about some of the specific functions in HR. And as we answer this questions typically performed during a background check, again, think about distractors. And if you see an answer that, my God, that seems absolutely right, don't question yourself, just answer that. So as we look at it, a background check is a verification of personal finances, involvement of religious or political activities, previous employment or education claims, or prior performance evaluations. So go ahead and put your answers in the chat. I'm seeing some C's, and we'll go ahead and look at the answer here. And you're correct. Again, this is one of those questions where it seems like I'm a little thrown by this. This seems like this is the obvious answer, but just do it, answer it, and move on as you go through your exams. So our next question is the primary purpose of a performance appraisal system: compare employees, provide employees developmental feedback, ensure employees understand the job, or determine how well management engages employees. I'll go ahead and answer that. One of the things that we have learned or taught or have provided to you, sometimes it's good to read the question backwards. I know that was a Nora technique that I always like doing. So if I go back to performance appraisal system, well developed, primary purpose, and it kind of helps you look at different ways to frame this question. And also read it a couple of times if you need to, and break it down. And performance appraisal system keeps coming up for me in this question. So you have it correct as you look at the answer. And this is an important concept too that you'll see throughout this test, throughout what you're looking at for studying for this, is really helping employees, help them be successful. Think about that when you're answering questions. Feedback and guidance is the right answer. Good job. Next one. So this is a question that's a good one because it will kind of test a couple of different things. It'll test that this is a national exam, meaning don't focus on California. This is a national exam and you want to go with broad questions and broad answers. So in this case, growing frequency employees who have been dismissed are resorting to lawsuits. So this means that they felt like they've been wrongfully terminated, lawsuits for redress or for remedy. In such cases, the court may find in favor of the plaintiff if the employer dismissed that plaintiff for, and go ahead and put this in. We do the brain walk. This is one you'll want to reread a couple times. You'll want to go back. You'll want to think what sticks out for you. We'll go ahead and show the answer, and then I'll describe it a little and then hand it off to legal counsel here. And B is correct. And A is a distractor. A is for cause but without progressive discipline. That is not something that would be where you would go in and look at a broad answer. So a broad answer meaning that there's without cause. And I know that as you look at our states, sometimes this gets people a little confused because California is one of 11 at-will states. So, but this is clearly a national exam and a national question. And oftentimes too, if I have a question about that, I will hand it to Rick for my legal counsel here.
Hi there. So yeah, D is the really obvious wrong one that, federal law says, no, that's something you cannot do. right? So you can eliminate that one pretty easily. Before the end of the probation period, well, that's why we have probation periods. So usually, you know, depending on what you do it for, it's probably going to be okay. A is looking at a process. So it says you've got cause, right? So yeah, if you have cause, you're probably going to be okay there. So we're left with B. And again, as Sherry said, you know, California is going to be different. You got to look at this from a national viewpoint. And where you start getting into trouble with without cause is, are there any of the forbidden reasons? You know, racial, gender, whatever bias that may come in. But even so, you can, in most states, just fire someone. The question, though, says the court may find, and it looked at growing frequency. So we're looking at a trend. We're not looking at an absolute. And I would go with B just because I could pretty much easily eliminate the others. But you know, you're going to be okay on that one if you think national.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Appreciate your advice there, your counsel. So we'll go to our next question.
However, that was not legal advice. So if you get sued, don't blame me.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Which of the following the most effective approach to preventing the need for employee disciplinary action? So think about, what would you do to prevent, or what would be an ongoing process that allows for clarity on your position and clarity in your role? Okay, we've got some A's and B's. I think that's great to have too. And let's go ahead and look at the answer for this. And as I mentioned before, having B as a distractor. B is, it's important to have an employee orientation program, but the most effective to preventing the need for disciplinary action. So when you look at it, if you really have been involved in a disciplinary action, unfortunately, with employees, the first thing you do is go back to the JD or the job description to see, where is this person not functioning well in their job description. And so think about that, think that question through, think the process through in the world of HR. And a job description is what allows employees to know what's expected of them, what their tasks are, and it's also something that will help if you need to do some work with an employee to help them be successful. Let's look at your job description, and these are the areas that we need to work on. So if you do it up front, the job description signed at the beginning of your employment, and it's reviewed with an employee, especially during their orientation period, then it might have the ability to prevent disciplinary action going forward. Next question. What should precede? So this is one of those timed order, what goes first, what goes second. What should precede the beginning of a recruitment process for a new employee? So as we look about this, we're further up a stream in terms of that before you're actually looking for the employee. Obtaining information from employees in a similar position to assess the validity, assess the cost of recruitment, make a decision whether to emphasize internal, external, or conduct a job analysis. So start with where you think would be the very first thing you do. And we'll look at the answer here. And we got D's, so absolutely, you did the right thing. Is you think about, okay, I'm even at that very beginning phase. So, and that's how the questions will look at it. Now, maybe A might be part of the process for job analysis. You might be looking at other positions and similar positions and so forth. But the first step you're actually doing is a job analysis. So, next question. The evaluation of senior management is best administered. So think about, that level of management position and where you're at with kind of looking at a broad answer here. Criteria is established and known to both parties on a scheduled periodic basis. After consultation with the executive committee of the board and in conjunction with a salary adjustment. So the evaluation of senior management is best administered, so sort of an action word. And we've got a lot of A's and D's. Now, administered, so we'll go ahead and look at the answer here. And that's pretty well a broad answer for anything as you talk about evaluating someone's, when criteria for success or criteria, like in a job description, are established and known to both parties. It's not uncommon to have it in conjunction with a salary adjustment, but the best way it's administered is when both parties know what to expect of each other. So, next question. So the critical incident technique of employee performance appraisals, and sometimes you'll see some of these and you will need to Google them. Not obviously not during the test, you can't bring in your phone, your Google machine, but kind of look at these as you look at critical incidents, what it includes, positive and negative technique of looking at individuals. So some of these are just definitions that it's good as if you don't recognize them right away, is to just put that in your list of things for your notes. So as we look at this particular technique, it requires raters to start putting your answers in for where you think. When we're seeing mixed A and D. And so requires the raters to is an important part in this statement, but let's go ahead and look at the answer. D, and I kind of gave you a little hint there. Critical incident is sort of a plus negative approach. And you're really looking at what your staff member, your employee has done that's been good in their performance, what you want to acknowledge. And instead of poor performance, I like to use the term opportunities. That's kind of more what we use it in HR and when we're working with individuals. But that is what to kind of look at when you look at this particular question. And go back, reread it, and look at action items. Next question, I think our last one. Okay, we're back to Hertzberg, my favorite, hygiene and motivators. So as we look at this, what would be important? And again, there's some distractors in here that seem off the wall and crazy, but there's some that might be kind of close to what you think could be it, or again, as a distractor. So if you've worked in or taken some of the motivational courses, put down your answer, what you think. Okay, so we're going to go through this, and I'm seeing some B's. I think these are still the. So these, go ahead and we'll look at the answer here. And this is an important concept. Is you've probably heard this before. I've heard it for many, many years. Is that the absence of adequate or what people might perceive as fair compensation is a dissatisfier. But money is not a primary motivator in this particular theory, and what has we've heard in pretty much other concepts and so forth for motivators. Extrinsic are outside of ourselves, intrinsic inside of ourselves. So as we say in this case, happiness is an inside job. If you remember that in terms of this question, you'll see that B is the right answer in the Hertzberg model, motivational model. So the next slide is a great slide. I would highly recommend you do something like this particular slide, this grid, this matrix. This is how I studied as well. I put just a table with the particular regulation or law, the year, and then some key things around it. And I like too that it includes the finance and health. And anyone else from our team want to add anything about this particular model? And I appreciate your time for HR today.
James may want to comment on this one, but I think particularly with the ratios, there's so many of them that if you can get the categories right, then that'll probably help guide you towards the specific ones. But there's just a lot of them if you're trying to memorize it. I like the matrix; it helps me. So yeah.
No, I agree, Rick. Yeah, and beyond that, just if you just have a general sense of what the purpose of the ratio is, I think that also helps versus memorizing it. Because a lot of the questions can be answered without maybe understanding, but if you have just a general concept of that, why they're used and what the intent of them, I think that will help a lot as well.
James, you mentioned ratios as you were answering questions, and you mentioned the various financial statements. What else do you think people ought to spend some time just trying to make sure that it's in their head?
I think I think really understanding some of the broader concepts. As we go through these questions, beyond the financial statements that talk about productivity measures. So think about in healthcare, which is productivity is something that's very tracked very closely. Just understand maybe those broader concepts, around the general purpose of these things. So, the different types of reimbursement methodologies, capitation versus fee for service and what those mean. It's all that type of stuff. There's just understanding those broader concepts will be important in terms of preparing yourself for the exam.
And same question to Sherry. Besides, some of the classic basic theories, and also I think the different types of doing employee evaluation, are there specifics that you think are more important?
I found when I studied for this one that it was important to know the particular laws and so forth. There'll be questions asked about that. And whether or not you're using Ken White's book, or there's some other books that have been recommended by ACHE for HR. Thank you. So appreciate that. That's a great one. Healthcare Resources Hub. I would spend some time on that just to have a very basic understanding, so you could answer something around the Civil Rights Act in 2 bullet points. And that way you'll have some confidence when you go in, and you won't be, flustered. Because the one thing you want to do is just keep yourself centered, like we talked about, heart focused breathing, and to still your mind so you can answer it to the best of your ability with what resources you have, and not get distracted by some of the health and HR laws. Thanks, Rick.
Okay, you want to have any other questions from the participants today?
Sachin, someone is asking, was this on the slides? And I'm assuming that's the question is about the matrix. Is that it, James Berkery? Is that what you're asking? Yes. So are the matrices on the slides that are sent out?
Yes. It'll be.
But remember that this is just these are just samples, and I think assembling it yourself for each of the areas is probably the best thing to do, because you really start pulling it together when you start putting it into the matrix. But start with the big categories and then fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I think also the body of knowledge that we went through in the very beginning on each section gives you a broad idea of the concepts you'll need to know and prepare for when taking the exam. So I would go back and look at those and just make sure you touch on each of those concepts, and you have a good general understanding.
but also recognize you're not going to know everything.
Right.
Neither does anyone else.
Remember in the ACHE website, when it talks about preparing for your exam for fellow, remember there's a competency grid that you can work on to also see where you may find some weaknesses, even in topics that you think you know a lot on. So again, ACHE provides some great resources.
All right, let me see if I can pull up some supplemental questions because we have a few short minutes here. Just give me 1 second.
I have to admit, HR is probably one of my weakest areas, and it makes me need to go back and look at it. And Sherry, I appreciated that you kept saying that this is national in scope. So if we want to talk so much about California, but it's like, wait, no, we're looking broadly.
Exactly.
Do you want to just address the HR because you have short time?
I think maybe finance is a good area. People, as I know, as I went through the exam, I think James gives great insight into finance. Maybe we'll do that one.
All right, here we go, James.
Okay. All right, let's go okay, so this one's asking set of medical codes used to report medical, surgical, and diagnostic procedures and services. Current procedural terminology, or CPT. B, diagnosis-related group, or DRG. C, ICD-10 codes, or C, SNOMED codes. And D. Yeah, this one, CPT codes, really addresses the medical, the surgical and diagnostic procedures, and it creates a uniform language for reporting to ensure consistency and accuracy. So I think that one's the best choice. The rest of these are, you know, DRGs really relate back to the, you know, type of patients are treated in the hospital. And the ICD-9s, these are another classification, classifying diseases and injuries and causes of death. And then SNOMED, that one's just another reporting. Just provide, again, all these provide clear and consistent, comprehensive reporting.
James, can I throw in something here?
Sure.
There are a lot of things where you just need to know what the word means, right? And
Yeah.
You don't have the dictionary with you. So whatever you're studying with, if it's any of the textbooks, they probably at the back of the chapter have a list of terminology, and use that to test yourself too. If you look through it and there's something you don't know, look it up. And it may help you, it may not, it may come back to you in the middle of the test, but
Yeah.
use that as a resource just to remind yourself of what to look up.
Yeah, and really here, you know, if you just know the definition on these, you know these are surgical and diagnostic procedure related. So this one's, you know, maybe an obvious versus the rest of these are kind of distractors. Okay, let's go to the next one. Ratios that measure an organization's long-term liquidity by measuring a variety of relations to capital. Fixed asset ratio, A, capital structure ratio, B, C, unrestricted net assets, or D, liquidity ratio. I think this one actually, we specifically addressed in one of the questions we went through. So that they're mentioning long-term liquidity. Remember that was the exact question we had and we talked about today. We talked about the differentiating on these other things. Liquidity was short-term, unrestricted net assets doesn't really have anything to do with liquidity. and fixed asset ratio, the same thing. So this one's an obvious one. Just again, make sure you understand the definition, or at least the concept behind these ratios will go a long way in answering these questions. Okay, let's go to the next one. 3, process of converting the operating plan into budgets for capital expenditure. Operating revenue, A, B, capital budgeting, C, financial strategic plan, or D, working capital. And then, you know, that one is obviously a capital budgeting, because it's really about evaluating potential major projects or investments that requires capital budgeting before the project is approved or rejected. So it mentions capital expenditures, and that's all part of capital budgeting. The rest of the stuff is just operating revenue is the operating budget, and financial strategic plan doesn't have anything to do with really capital or work. And working capital is, again, another distractor. Print, submit, print bill, submit bill, follow up bill, and collect bill or bill resolution is called revenue cycle A, operating cycle B, payment cycle C, or D, service cycle. And that one is it's going to be the payment cycle. It's taking you through the whole cycle from the day you pay until the day you're due to pay for the following month.
So what's revenue cycle then? How's that different?
Revenue cycle is it refers to all the administrative and clinical functions that contribute to capture, management, and collection of patient service revenue. But this is really more specific about the payment cycle. So I think revenue cycle is a little more broad. Certainly does include that, but they're specifically asking about the billing portion of revenue cycle. Revenue cycle in term includes more than the payment cycle, so that's a difference.
Very well said.
Thank you. Okay, so this next one, resources and organization expect to see within 1 year is your non-current assets, A, B, deferred revenue, C, current assets, or D, current liabilities. So this one is going to be your current assets. This is converting when they convert cash within a short time, usually within a year or within their operating cycle. Okay.
We just have
Okay.
a couple of minutes. Sherry, you want to just go through a couple of them?
I'll just do 1 or 2. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Keep you in the HR mindset. The theory that employees in organizations will be promoted to their highest level of competence and then be promoted to and remain at a level at which they are incompetent. So what principle is this? I kind of gave you a clue there. Yep, it's an older principle. The Peter principle is sort of one that has been provided to us in literature and so forth, and it may or may not be in the newer questions that have been set up, but that this would be a potential question. Next topic, next question.
Option D makes me smile, but is that even an existing policy or framework?
Yeah, there are some very funny distractors in the HR world, as is the case with HR. There's a lot of distractors in HR, so this is kind of consistent with when you practice in your non-binding type of dispute resolution. This is a good one, and I would make notes to yourself to be able to have a definition for litigation, arbitration, mediation, and alternative dispute resolution. Put that down in your definition study guides, because it is important. This is something that comes into play quite a bit in HR. Non-binding type of dispute resolution in which a neutral third-party attempts to assist in negotiation between two primary parties. And we're seeing D. And let's look at our answer. Yep, you're
What's
absolutely
the
right.
difference
Mediation.
between mediation and arbitration?
The
Mediation
difference
is,
between D and B? Yeah, Rick,
Yeah.
go for it.
I'm sorry. Mediation is trying to get the parties to come together. Arbitration is someone else making the decision, and that could be either binding or non-binding arbitration. But it's like a judge hears both sides and makes a decision, where mediation is trying to get everyone to sing kumbaya around the campfire together.
Right.
As we do the brain walk and you think of things that will come back to you during your exam, mediation, kumbaya. Think of that, kumbaya mediation.
Good point.
I did that when I studied for the exam, as I remembered what some of the speakers provided to us. Mediation, kumbaya, neutral. This is important. There are some questions in the HR section that has to do with some of these rates, ratios. So again, take this slide and write down what turnover rate is, retention rate, recruitment is not a ratio, right? Recruitment strategy, technique, and vacancy rate. So you're going to eliminate C. A summary of the gross movement in and out. Okay, what's in and out mean? Coming and going of staff in an organization during a specific time frame. So in and out. Let's see what people put down, and we'll look at the answer. A, correct. Turnover rate. Vacancy rate has important, tells us what's happening. It means how many positions are open. It's a big thing to look at when you do your strategic plan, and you need to figure out what resources you're going to need to move forward in your organization. As vacancy rate's important, but your turnover rate, really the ins and outs in the organization is, and as we know, it's been triple digit in healthcare for quite some time since COVID, and it will likely be a question or some type of question that'll be on the exam. Thank you. I think that's good. Two supplemental questions, or three good ones. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We will do expect us to send over the recording of this session as well as the presentations with the supplemental questions by mail to you. By email, please do let us know if you're not receiving it, so make sure to get them to you. So next week would be our last session, focusing on quality and IT in healthcare. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
I